All right, do you know this company Tourmaline?
Yes.
It's kind of related, adjacent, but the idea is like if you look at longitudinal data, it was published like last year in the New England Journal of Medicine.
IL-1 went through this journey with Ilaris.
It's interesting. It's like, everything we thought about heart disease with respect to like the lipids and stuff seems to be kind of secondary to this like inflammatory phenotype, right? Like the more inflamed you are, like the more heart disease and stuff you have. I guess the reason I bring it up is because it's like, it's interesting to believe that like the immune system is what's really driving like heart attacks and like can be kind of adjacent to this idea. It's like, okay, yeah, you have junky amyloid buildup here, but it's secondary to the immune system in the brain just going haywire and killing everything.
I just sent the TNF signaling pathway from KEGG. I don't know how much you look at these KEGG charts or like at some of the other pathway charts, but like there's a lot of molecules on this thing. And where exactly are we hitting and why is the question. And obviously people have tried, as you may know, Denali, I think, tried RIPK1 or one of these things. They've tried P38, which is upstream, I think, of TNF or maybe downstream.
Well, you're hitting the soluble, right? So it's basically upstream of everything here.
Right. A lot have tried to sort of like nail this down. And I think P38, RIP, all these have failed. P38's downstream of at least TNFR2. I think it's also TNFR1. And you get some of these transcription factor selectivity where maybe you want to use, RIPK1, but that didn't work. P38, which didn't work. Which one of these is the exact answer? And again, my sort of simplest conclusion is that this is actually very difficult. And if it's one of these, it's not the one we're after. And if it's, and more likely it's not on one of these lists and it's something more complicated for the same reason we can't treat schizophrenia, for the same reason we can't treat depression. This is sort of a meta phenomenon, right? Like the problem with Alzheimer's, one of the problems is there's no like, cognitive test is so downstream of like this meta process.
Yeah.
So it's like, is it synaptic pruning? It could be something as simple as, just like, I don't know if you ever looked at Shank or any of these other like synapse proteins, but there's a whole bunch of like synaptopathies and like Shankopathies. So like I worked on this thing called Shank3, which is just a very bizarre like little protein, but it's critical in making important synaptic connections and like just something that like interrupts this thing by accident could be it, there's thousands of potential proteins that, are implicated in Alzheimer's. I think the best bet is ApoE. And while I was in prison of all things, I wanted to make an ApoE corrector. And I think Vertex and a few other companies have looked at this, one particular company that's private, where the difference between ApoE, epsilon 3 versus epsilon 4 and epsilon 2, it's all one amino acid. And you should be able to knock in the same way Vertex does correctors, knock in the right conformation. And you go from, look at the data, so compelling. ApoE2 is 10x protective versus ApoE4. You should be able to fix the disease that way. And I think somebody's doing ApoE gene therapy, right? One of these public, like Lyra or somebody, I forget who. Somebody's doing one of these. I forget what. It's like a really small market cap too. And it's ApoE4, like Lenti or AAV. And, that to me seems like a home run. Now can you get expression with it? It's very hard with the gene therapy, but I'd even make an ApoE4, just pump it in recombinant. And, maybe you get a ride on LDL receptor to the brain or something, but, you should be able to get, enough there, or you'd make the corrector that traffics to the brain. But either way, like it certainly seems like, ApoE is the answer, at least one of the main answers you can rest your head on and say, this is actually causal of the disease. You were born with the wrong isoform, you're getting Alzheimer's. You're born with the right isoform, you're protective of Alzheimer's. How much better can you get than that? And, the answer could be in lipids. And again, what's the downstream effector? It would be nice to know, but ApoE is function is a bit mysterious, right?
Yeah, there's been some papers recently that are trying to understand it, but yeah, I I hear you. It's a good idea.
I mean, it's at least the best, scientific evidence, I think. And then, yeah, the way the brain works is like, I've been working a lot in AI. These neural networks really seem like they are very similar to the brain. When you prune 5 or 10% of a neural network, you can just literally set the weights to 0. Nothing happens. It still works. It's kind of amazing. And as you prune these weights a little bit more, you can do this to save disk space, for example. You end up like slowly eroding the function of the neural network. And at some point, it becomes so garbled it doesn't work anymore. And it certainly seems like our brains are neural networks. So to me, I think through some of this and say like, some of this could just be irreparable. It's just entropy working its way through the system. And there's literally no way out. It's kind of like liver disease or IPF or, some of these like really, maybe liver's not great because they do seem to have antifibrotics that are working, but certain fibrotic diseases, there's just no way out. Entropy will take over and you lose. But in terms of the AI neural network stuff, it really is fascinating to see how similar it is.
Yeah, I guess it depends on what do you think of the GLP-1 in Alzheimer's?
I don't think it's causal enough. I think it's so too distant. Like,
you don't think it's going to work?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I hope so, right? But
yeah,
I'd be surprised. I mean, I think, like I said, when you're dealing, like I said, take the neural network that OpenAI works on or something Google works on, from just literally variables that contain weights. There's no code in any of these neural networks. They're just numbers. And you could think of them as like calcium concentrations in a cell. And their connections and the way they cycle is what's important. And so you think about Alzheimer's, like cognition arises from the synapses and their connections. And you're sort of like really far away, I think, from with TNF. You're talking about cell survival. It's not the part of this that matters, which is delicate, like synaptic, conservation and synaptic pruning and learning and all these things that are like really just a totally different branch of biology. I think that's what's getting disrupted.
My pushback to that would be that, yes, you're right. You can prune most of the brain and it continues to work. But at some point, you're at the critical juncture, right? Where like any more pruning and any more pruning and you start to see, real effects. And that's what these inclusion criteria try to enrich for, right? They try to enrich for patients who are on the brink of noticeable dementia.
But are we going to get that benefit from something so orthogonal to the learning process, the arborization of cell-to-cell communication? This stuff TNF is working on is like very much like the end product of cell death, whereas at the higher meta level, like the difference between being completely crazy and being a Nobel Prize winner is just some small synaptic rearrangement. And it feels like
it's like brain fog, right? Brain fog goes away after one NSAID.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective from like the GABA side, maybe. But you can see how all the like GABA and NMDA, there have been attempts, as you know, to do muscarinics in Alzheimer's. There have been attempts to do the mGlu-R. There's still attempts to do mGlu-R for like just what is the generic like synaptic speed, and like glutamate is like almost the oil of the brain. But yeah, the just like reading about how memories are constructed and how we form, and learn things, it's fairly clear that this is really, really hard stuff. And the metacognition, it would be one thing if it's MS, where it's like, okay, we're attacking the nerve system, that's bad, need to stop attacking. Great. Alzheimer's, what we're fundamentally trying to save in cognition is something that we don't understand. It's very meta. The brain gives rise to consciousness and intelligence that it's hard to fathom why that happens and how it happens, and we don't understand it. So to save it,
right? But I'm giving you like a plausible mechanism, right? It's like, hey, you have this junk in the brain that doesn't get out because your blood vessels are caked with amyloid from years of obesity or diabetes or just age, and that caking leads to a backup, and that backup activates the microglia and the astrocytes to kill everything. So if you just stop their ability to kill through like a TNF alpha inhibitor, then maybe you can save cognition, right? I'm not saying they're going to get better. I'm saying the other guys are, on the decline, and, maybe these guys decline less.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good hypothesis. I think the other end of it that I guess I'm trying to point out is the gigantic synaptosome, of like 200 or 300 proteins that regulate the construction of synapses. And
but there's nothing wrong with them, right?
Yeah, they're both, like, I think, kind of important.
No, but there's nothing wrong with them fundamentally, like a genetic basis of like.
Well, we don't know if amyloid beta is causing a big problem.
People with Alzheimer's aren't, cognitively impacted earlier in their lives. They become that way.
Right. It takes time, and maybe it's again a process we don't understand vis-a-vis amyloid beta and ApoE and totally other branch of biology, and TNF's actually trying to save the day. It's getting called by accident, and it's doing more damage than good, or it's doing more good than damage. Both hypotheses are actually pretty reasonable. I have some papers that actually show that. There's a paper for every hypothesis, which is the funniest part, right? Like, yeah. And I think like the synaptome is something to think about.
I think we're actually kind of in agreement, but we just kind of take the other side.
Yeah. Yeah. And TREM2, somebody's mentioning TREM2. I think, real well, TREM2 did not work. So it's interesting. There's some pretty compelling data to suggest that Alector's construct was inferior to Vigil's, and then Vigil got taken out by Sanofi, I think like a couple of weeks ago. Right. So it maybe still has a chance.
It still has a chance, but also kind of TBD. I don't know.
What do you think it happens Monday?
I don't know about Monday, but definitely by the end of the month.
I'm guessing they have it. I just hope that they're honest, for your sake and my sake. Like, trying to spin it isn't going to do anyone any good. Do you think management team's that kind of management team, or?
I think they'll be honest. I mean, they're going to show the top line data with numbers and p-values. So that's
all you really ask for, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty optimistic. The trial should have closed like over a month ago now. I don't think they've seen the data, but who knows?
What worries me is like if you have a family that's like a couple of individuals that are running the company, they started it, they're really married to this thesis, they see the data, it's bad. They start saying, well, what about mild to moderate? Maybe we can stratify for patients who are really sick, et cetera, et cetera. And they just start to comb through the thing like crazy.
They need money though.
Yes,
right.
That is true.
Like if they can't convince people to give them money, it's a zero.
Yeah.
Like they have to show enough for investors to be like, all right, here's $300 million.
Or $10 million.
For like a proper phase 3 program?
No, I mean, just to keep existing. And I mean, we've seen all these pipes. But
then it's like a short, it'll fade.
Yeah, but people do pipes that, just keep these companies going, and, hope springs eternal. They do ATMs, they do other deals. They just find a way to continue existing.
Yeah, they could hit the ATM and like exist, but it'll be lower valuation, I imagine.
I think so too.
I guess I don't think there's really a risk to us, getting the trade wrong because of like management's presentation. I think it's either going to hit or it's not going to hit. It'll be pretty clear, but we'll see. You kind of emboldened me on the Sava. So it's like, I knew that thing was a fraud for years. But,
awesome. So you made some money?
Yeah, man. You were.
I'm glad to hear that. There. CAPR course should be really interesting.
I don't know. Like the data is pretty suspect, but I don't know how motivated this FDA is.
Now that SRPT happened, they're just going to stand, cross their arms, and say no way. We can't.
I mean, this one's not as unsafe, but
I mean, they just can't unwind the SRPT debacle because people are on the drug. You can't just stop taking it, and you can't unwind an approval, but you can prevent new approvals.
I think so too, but it's just like so retail-y, so squeezy, that like I got to be careful with those.
All of these stocks are. It's like so hard to find a good short that's like not consensus or whatever. Somebody wants to know if you've looked at the quantum computing companies. It sounds like you just do biotech.
Yeah, no, I mostly do biotech. I think I don't know. Like, I think I was listening to some of your stuff. It seems reasonable, but it's hard to fight the trend, you know?
Yes.
And there's so much excess capital, like, flowing into AI that, like, you know, if you're a Fidelity or BlackRock, to put in like 100 million in, or like, you know, $1 billion in AI and then throw like 50 million by the way of quantum kind of makes sense. And it kind of takes time for these like trades to pan out, and it's like a matter of flow.
It's funny. I did an analysis of every bubble I could think of from the past, including the .com bubble, which I lived through. And my memory is that these things happened really fast, but the data is that they take about a year, sometimes longer. So our memory is like, oh yeah, we shorted it, we were heroes, but
it's painful.
It was like the .com thing was really easy for me because I showed up on Wall Street at the exact top, but for .coms, Soros and Tiger had already thrown in the towel. You know, they basically closed their firms down because they couldn't short any more .coms. It was so infuriating. And that's the way I feel about quantum. And, you know, if it's not quantum, there's other people short like the VTOLs or nuclear or whatever. And like Circle is I don't know if you've seen Circle, but they priced the thing at like 30 and it's almost at 300.
Insane.
Anyway, last one.
I saw you were day trading it. That's all I saw.
Yeah, I almost felt like FOMO. Have you looked at Compass?
Yeah, I have.
What do you think?
I think we're not. I mean, I think it should be fine, but we're not going to get clarity on the durability until the second half of 26. So,
but it's probably going to work. You think? I think it has a chance.
Yeah, I think it'll probably work. They're a little bit suspect on like the safety profile, a suicidality signal. So like, I don't know really how to read it, but I think we're not going to really have a clear answer until second half of 26. But in the meantime, like RFK likes psychedelics, so it's just kind of an impossible thing to trade.
Yeah, I mean, if they come out and they have a real signal, I mean, I don't think that's a bad thing. But you also have that GHRS, and it kind of just shows you any psychedelic gives you a signal here.
Right. Yeah, GHRS completely faded the move. So
yeah. So we'll see. People have different perspectives on things. Sometimes you tell somebody, "I'll give you a 10% chance to make 10x your money," and they say, "That sounds great." Other people say, "Oh, a 10% chance. There's no way that's going to happen." And for humans, statistics are very hard to like parse. I'm not saying I'm right, by the way. You know, for some people, they'll look at expected value and say, "I'm just going to do the expected value." But Kahneman wrote a lot about this, where, you know, it's very hard to perceive expected value. Most people either bake in an irrational pessimism, optimism. I don't know, but there's been a lot of work done on that, on those mental models. Hopefully, some of you guys bought Circle when I bought it and still held it. I chickened out. Couldn't handle that. Couldn't handle the heat. Yeah, I try to bring more and more of my hedge fund people on. Obviously, they like to stay anonymous, but I've getting more and more of these dudes on the phone. They're very regulated and don't want to use their names, so they got to be careful, especially if they work for a bigger firm. They might have to use a voice changer. Oh, he said he shorted some of these things in the past, so I think he is a hedge fund, but I don't know him personally. But I do know most of the hedge fund players. Right, people feel loss much bigger than a gain. Yeah, it's funny that Circle's up a huge amount, but Square and PayPal which are doing the same thing. Yeah, not too many people. There was one guy who was pretty smart who called in on D-Wave, but I think he sold it. Really sharp dude. And he had like kind of a momentum trading strat. It wasn't like heavy on fundamentals, but it made sense. His long thesis made sense. It wasn't bad. And obviously, look, the stock, I mean, he made like 5 times his money or something. So he's sitting pretty. But I think some of my comments maybe made him think a little bit harder about the long. I think he sold it for his clients, he said. So IBM is doing some weird stuff, man. We'll see if they make it. I think management might be pressing them. Reddit tried might be great. We'll see if the side effect profile holds up. Okay, I've crossed into down 39% territory. The comeback. Sad boy. Let me think. Yeah, Rosenbaum's thing is good. You want the best book ever written on pharma? That'll make you a pharma genius? Let me get it for you. I got an early copy of it. A bunch of my friends are in it, but it's like very, very, very esoteric. I got the first edition. This is a really good book. It's called Hallelujah Moments. And it's by Eugene Cordes. I don't know him, but I know the people he worked for. And it's basically if you really want to understand pharma, this is a really fantastic book. And it's like something that very few people know. CAPR just dropped $4. The CAPR. Disagreements over Duchenne have led to the ouster. 𝗦𝗍 was skeptical and canceled the meeting. Oh, it's over. Meeting's canceled and you're fired. Let's have a meeting to discuss approving your drug. Meeting's canceled and you're fired. You were all cap all along. The problem is I wasn't to start this CAPR. I wanted to wait, catch the INMB, flip the script right into the CAPR, and flipped it right back into quantum, 100x. But unfortunately, that's how you flip a script. He's probably just feeling himself on the 𝗦𝗪𝗔 too. He's like, this is just like a 𝗦𝗪𝗔. Not on my watch. No, not on my watch. Cancel the AdCom. You know what? Matter of fact, hold on a second. Can we put her on leave? Yeah, we can. You're on leave, starting immediately. Get out of my office. Could you imagine being a fly on the wall for that? Remember, we already went through this rodeo with CAPR once, remember? It went all the way back down. I covered it. It went all the way back up. I should have shorted it again. When you name your company CAPR, bro, it's all cap. Stop the cap. Survival is the endpoint. That's it. Overall survival. That's the endpoint. Maybe if you're lucky, we'll look at progression-free survival. I mean, it just sort of goes to show you how weird, like, stances change. Like, when I was prosecuted, the burden to prosecute somebody was basically like non-existent. It was like, yeah, throw them all in jail. Now it's like, bro, you better be a terrorist if we're putting you in federal prison. You better be an illegal or a terrorist. Otherwise, it's not a crime. It doesn't fit our agenda. America first. So, drugs work the same way. It was like, there's an era where the FDA would let you, like, we have to be flexible with how we look at drugs. Now it's like, yeah, only flexibility we have is how close to stat sig did you get? That's it. We might accept a 0.045. But way back when I was growing up in the industry, 0.04 is still a fail. The FDA would just take 3 patients out and be like, yeah, well, exclude these 3 patients, you're at 0.06. So it's not convincing. Now it's the other way around. They're like, well, if you throw these 3 patients out, I'm at 0.01, we're good to go. It really is just a function of like, who's in charge? How do they view it? Like I said, it's not just a medicine. I don't follow Regenx very closely. Look, there are a lot of careerists who want to be at FDA. I don't. It's just not there are people who like their life goal is to be at FDA. Not me, baby. It's 32 times revenue, and a bunch of that revenue belongs to Coinbase. It's really like 60 times. Oh, the CAPR. 𝗦𝗍 said, nah, we ain't doing this no more. FDA cleaning house, saying no more garbage. Stop bringing the garbage around here. Escorted out. So that's what it looked like, I think. The old FDA created a mode for Sarepta, yes. That started the HNIC. That was the first, I think that was the first ever usage of the term. But yeah, CAPR has gone to zero. Just a question of when they'll get the, maybe not. Yeah, it's a good question. It may have preceded it. It may have not have. It probably had to come from the streets, right? Just, it's a very volatile stock. You got to be, it's still 300 million market cap. Use 𝗏𝗏𝗘𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 got 130 million in cash, no debt. So that's $3 a share in cash or $5 a share in cash. Yeah, it's kind of trading where it's supposed to, isn't it? What's that? $3, right? 50 times 3 is 150. They have call it 140. By next quarter, they'll have closer to 100, I would imagine. So $2 to $3 in cash. So it's still got a ways to drop. 17% interest rate, but we're short. Use CF for company filings. I think that's the best way to do it.